Hi, David Vizard here, and you are watching PowerTec 10. If you care to give me a few minutes of your time, I'll give you the benefit of over 64 years now of race winning, engine building, and racing, plus all the little tricks and do's and don'ts that go to make up a lot of what goes on here. So bear with me and let's go on with the show. It's been a hectic last few days, right? I have been up to here in this, that and the other. So I'm going to take a break and I'm going to do something which best can be described as a little frivolous. I'm going to give you a whole load of information that's basically totally useless. And it's all centered around those things I found different when I came over here for the first time in 1970. Let's get the ball rolling on something that's really simple. It wasn't until I arrived in New York in January of 1970 that I found I liked pizza. Did you know American Italians do a much better job at pizza than Italians, right? But that's by the by. I like eating. And one of the things that I liked was pastries, especially when they went with fried sausages and things like this. Anyway, I saw in McDonald's or something like that, buttermilk biscuits, and I thought, wow, I bet you they're nice and soft and moist and juicy. So I ordered some buttermilk biscuits, and they were terrible. Nothing like I expected. Very dry and just generally not very edible. I mean, you guys might have got used to them. But then, after a couple of years, I found out why they're dry. Now, what do you think buttermilk biscuits have in them? You'd think it was buttermilk, wouldn't you? No. It's debuttered milk. It's milk with the butter fats taken out of it, not the butter fats, a lot of butter fats in it. And that explains why they're so very dry. Make them with high cream content milk and they taste much better. Anyway, that's one point I wanted to bring up. But here's some others that don't tie up. Firstly, I think you know what a shock absorber is. Actually, most of you don't. That thing which telescopes in and out and has oil in it and things like this that you can adjust, that's not a shock absorber. That is an energy damper. The shock absorber is the spring, right? Think about this. What we call a shock absorber, the more shock you give it, the less that it absorbs of that shock or passes on to the other end of it, right? In fact, if you hit that shock absorber hard enough, it's solid. That shock absorber isn't absorbing the shock. It didn't absorb the energy either. On the other hand, the harder you hit a spring, the more it copes with dealing with the energy it's going to absorb. Of course, it returns it all, but it absorbs that energy, right? So that's another thing. Now, let me pick on one here that's... here's a good one. Had this guy come into our shop, and he had just inherited a BMW dealership. It's a pretty big one. Had 26 people working for it. His uncle, who didn't have any kids, had passed on and willed it to him. Now, this guy was a very much qualified mechanical engineer, right? I can't remember what he worked at, but he wasn't as such a car guy. However, one of the things I learned pretty quick into getting to know this guy while we were working on his BMW was he was smart. Anyway, he had some problems. He brought the engine in to dyno test, right? the problem that he had was that the engine seemed to lose control of the valves that are somewhere around about 7,500, right? And he'd been told that there wasn't enough valve seat pressure, So, and of course I didn't find this out until after we dyno tested it. When we ran it on the dyno, it still had this misfire and the valve train losing control at about 7,500. And he said, you know, I've obviously had some dud advice from the cam manufacturer. And I said, well, what did they tell you? They said, well, I had to increase the spring pressure, right? He said, I did that, didn't make any difference. Okay. I said, what did you do? And he says, well, I went in there with a cutter and narrowed down the seats so that the poundage on the seats would be more pounds per square inch, increase the seat pressure. Well, of course, he did exactly as that cam company told him to do. He increased the seat pressure. Now, the thing is that's not what he should have done. That's not what that cam guy should have told him. He should have said, you need to increase the force the spring delivers to the seat, right? That's not pressure. Pressure is pounds a square inch. Force is pounds, right? So when people glibly say, well, the spring pressure on the seat is this, it's not spring pressure. It is the preload pounds force, right? Pressure is like oil pressure, pounds per square inch. When that guy thinned down the seats, what did he do? He cut the seats so they had about 2/3 the area. So technically, he increased the seat pressure by 30%. So all of these people who keep on saying, well, the seat pressure, that's wrong. Here's an interesting thing. Chris Osborne, who used to be the guy that you would get at Pack Springs when you called up, their tech guy, and he's good at lecturing on springs, and I've listened to some of his stuff, right? Actually, I've listened to a lot of his stuff. He tells great jokes, right? I miss not going to PRI to see him. However, he never says spring pressure, right? The spring load on the seat. That's the term he uses. So without trying to correct everybody in the world, he is actually using the same, the right technology. Now, I've often heard people say when they've made a really good pass down the drag strip and they've gone faster than ever before. Yes, we picked up 0.2 and 1.5 miles an hour. And I'm thinking, I don't want to pick up any time on the quarter mile. I want to lose it. Now, if I was to tell somebody I'd gone faster, I'd say, well, I dropped 0.2 and picked up whatever mile an hour it was. And you never hear a road racer, well, certainly not in England, which is where I've done much of my racing on road courses, right? If you cut a lap time, you don't pick up tenths of a second or seconds or whatever it is. You drop them, right? And your average mile an hour, well, that goes up. So we dropped, let's say, Silverstone. We dropped a second and picked up 3 miles an hour average speed, right? So when you go down the drag strip, if you pick up ET, you've just gone slower, right? You need to drop it. So what's this on the end of the crankshaft here? Can anybody tell me? How many of you said it's a harmonic balancer? Sorry, doesn't balance any harmonics at all. It's a crankshaft torsional damper. In a recent video, I believe it would be number 57, I showed my friend David McCoy timing a cam in with this degree wheel here with 2 rings on it. This one turns separately. Let me show you a close-up. Now hopefully you can see this. I made it out of a competition cam's degree wheel, this part number. But I added this second ring here, right? No one's guessed Well, I think one guy's got a good idea, but so far no one's guessed on the comments section of 57. However, I'm going to use this to time the cam on my friend Sean's 350 that we're doing for his Model A. Then you'll see what it does. When it comes to motor racing, I'm good at winning bets, right? I don't believe I've ever lost one. You know, betting somebody, well, I'll be there before you are, or whatever. Like, but here's one that was didn't seem to be very likely that I could even remotely win. Here I am, I'm running a sedan in the basically a modified stock class at Santa Pod in England. And I'm good buddies with the Firefly Top Fuel team, right? They're a team that all bunched together, you know, 5 or 6 of them. They all put their hands in their pocket and they run a front-end engine dragster. Now, this is 1971. So a good top fuel car back then was hitting 240 miles an hour. And they were doing good. Although they had an old car, technically they were very good at running it. Anyway, I was talking with the team leader, and the conversation cropped up. During the conversation, it cropped up that we talked about speeds and ETs and things like this, and it suddenly occurred to me that I might be able to win a bet by running my car against theirs. And here's the conditions that we had to do it. First off, it had to be an all-out pass. We couldn't just cruise down there. And secondly, it had to be exactly to the rules as stated in the RAC rulebook, right? So I made a bet. If we both made a pass, I would win, right? And they had not to break any rules that were laid down in the RAC rulebook. Well, we come to make the pass and they blast off and they do an incredibly... Oh, and I said, if they win, I will pay for their fuel to do the pass, right? As well as winning the bet, right? So anyway, we made the pass, and guess what? They blazed off down the drag strip in their usual fashion, and I did my normal high 14s run. And when it was all said and done, I won. You know why? Well, of course you don't. Right. The RAC rulebook for race cars, one of the things they say is, now let me step back a bit. When this rule was written in the RAC rulebook, we were talking about the 50s, so it's 20 years. And a lot of cars, like my dad's Ford V8 Pilot, they had jacks on the car so that you could put a lever, open the hood, put a lever in, jack this handle, and 4 jacks came down, lifted the whole car off the ground. Right, great idea. Well, anyway, in the rule book, it said that the car must not be fitted with, or the vehicle must not be fitted with any device capable of lifting the road wheels off the ground. And I pointed out to these top fuel guys that when they left the start line, they pulled the front wheels off the ground. So their car was illegal, and the engine did that. So if they want to run against me, they got to take the engine out. Yeah, bit underhanded, wasn't it? But anyway, they saw the point. But that wasn't the only bet I won. If you go back to the 70s, the big deal was doing flame burnouts. Same team, actually. It was a couple of teams, right? A joint bet. That in my Chrysler Avenger, I could do a very good flame burnout. At this point, we weren't sure how we were going to do it, but we knew we were. Anyway, in the middle of the night, I woke up and I said to we're in a trailer, a 14-foot trailer, right? I woke up and I said, I know how to do it. And my crew chief, Colin, he said, yes, I just thought of it. Right, and can you believe it? Within seconds, we both thought of the same idea of how to do this flame burnout, right? And it had to be one where there was no outside assistance to get the flames going. So did I win that bet? Sure as hell did, and here is a photo of that flame burnout. If you look carefully, you'll be able to see the mist fuel mix we put on the ground spraying up. And just after this photograph was taken, those flames were 30 feet high. So we did an absolutely enormously good burnout. Flame burnout. So here's the flame burnout that won me the bet against Top Fuel guys. This wasn't the best shot that could have been taken, but had the photographer taken this even just a second later, that fog of fuel just behind the flames or just above them would have recorded a 30-foot high flame burnout. Did I win the bet? Sure I did. Okay, have to wind this up about here, and I'm going to leave you Ford guys with something to drool over. Take a look at the intake on that. It's a modified GT40 intake. That 306 there on a 10.5-to-1 compression delivered 441 foot-pounds of torque, all due to that intake. If you want to find out how that was done, just stick with us here, and all you've got to do is like, subscribe, comment, and ring that notification bell. Thanks for watching.